You know what happens when you assume. You make an ass out of you and me. And I think it is pretty safe to say that if there is one thing we've well learned from watching all these videos, it is that perhaps we made something of an ass out of ourselves when it comes to assuming the nature of Mr. Now, in our last video, we started to look at the possibility that Emmanuel Goldstein was some figment of Big Brother's imagination, but in fact, the leader of the resistance against the party, a man known as the chairman. We also saw that Mr. O'Brien, rather than being a loyal servant of Big Brother, was potentially the true leader of the Brotherhood, a rebel faction, who was secretly plotting to overthrow the party once and for all. Now, if you haven't watched that video yet, then go and watch it, because it's bloody brilliant, and then come back here. We ended that video with O'Brien and Winston engaging in a little bit of light banter as they played their game of chess, only this time with Winston having the white pieces. I won't spoil the ending for you again, but suffice to say that O'Brien revealed he was a member of the Brotherhood, and handed Winston a membership card before disappearing into the night. So now we find ourselves asking the question, how did O'Brien betray Winston like this, after years of supposed friendship and comradeship within the party? Well, to answer this question, let us jump forward in the narrative and see how things could have unfolded. Had O'Brien really been the leader of the resistance all along? O'Brien stood over Winston's broken body and felt a pang of sadness shoot through him. He had no choice. Winston had become too much of a liability. His rebellious thoughts were becoming more and more obvious, and he would eventually become a danger to the state, a threat to the party. But Winston didn't need to die right now. No, Winston was going to be needed in the future. When the revolution finally came, Winston would be its figurehead, the rallying point for the people of Oceania. He had to live, but he couldn't remember who he was or what he believed in. So O'Brien erased him, wiped him clean. It was painful, yes, but necessary. He looked down at the now unconscious form of Julia, and knew that she too would have to be dealt with. He hoped that her punishment wouldn't be quite so harsh, but he knew that she, like Winston, would never be quite the same again. As he led her away, he cast one final glance back at room 101, and walked out into the hallway, leaving behind the shell of the lovers, who had dared to dream of a world beyond Big Brother. It had taken years, decades really, but he had finally infiltrated the innermost circle of the party. With the capture of O'Brien, Big Brother had them all beat. They had laid their plans in motion. What was written in the book was now coming to fruition. The end of the second cycle had begun. He sat back in his chair and allowed himself a rare smile. All of this had been worth it. The torture, the pain, the loss of everything that made him human. It was all worth it because soon he would be free from the shackles of Big Brother, free from the tyranny of England, free to take back control of his life and build a new world where freedom and democracy reigned supreme. He rose from his seat and walked over to the telescreen, stopping just short of it. He deactivated the screen with a click of a button and turned around. He walked over to the bookshelf and ran his hand along the spines of the books until he found the one he was looking for. He pulled it from the shelf and opened it. It was a dog-eared copy of Animal Farm, a satirical novella he had written several years earlier about a group of farm animals who would rebel against their human farmer in order to create an animal-run farm, only to find that the pigs gradually assumed the characteristics of the farmer they had rebelled against. He smiled sadly. It had taken him years to realize the truth about the farm, about the pigs and their leader, Napoleon. But now he knew that the same fate awaited him and his fellow rebels. Even if they succeeded in overthrowing Big Brother, even if they managed to dismantle Ingsoc and restore democracy to Oceania, what was to stop him from becoming like Napoleon, from exploiting the very system he had helped to create? He looked down at the book in his hands and sighed. He knew the answer to that question. He knew that he couldn't allow himself to become like Napoleon, that he had to remain true to the ideals of the rebellion, true to the memory of those who had fallen, true to the hope for a better future. He closed the book and placed it back on the shelf. He knew what he had to do. Outside, the rain was coming down in torrents, but O'Brien hardly noticed. He was lost in thought. He had made a terrible mistake. He shouldn't have trusted Winston. He shouldn't have recruited him into the Brotherhood. Yes, Winston had been useful, no doubt about it. He had managed to infiltrate the Ministry of Love and steal valuable information that had helped the Brotherhood carry out several successful missions. But Winston was a liability. His rebellious thoughts were becoming more and more obvious, and he would eventually become a danger to the state, a threat to the party. But it was too late now. Winston was gone and the damage was done. O'Brien sighed. He knew that he couldn't change the past, but he could change the future. He had a duty to the Brotherhood, a duty to the cause, a duty to the people of Oceania. He straightened his shoulders and walked out into the rain. He hailed a cab and gave the driver an address. It was a safe house where several members of the Brotherhood were hiding. O'Brien knew that he might be walking into a trap, but he didn't care. He had to try. He owed it to Winston, to Julia, to everyone who had suffered under the yoke of Big Brother. The cab pulled up outside the house and O'Brien paid the driver. He looked back at the retreating cab and then at the house. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Inside the house, the members of the Brotherhood were gathered together, waiting for their leader. They were a motley crew, a mix of old and young, male and female, high and low, but they were united in their hatred of Big Brother and their desire for a better future. O'Brien entered the room and the members of the Brotherhood rose to their feet. There was a moment of silence as they looked at their leader, their eyes filled with admiration and respect. "Comrades," O'Brien began, his voice strong and clear, "we have suffered a setback. Our plans have been uncovered, and many of our comrades have been captured or killed. But I am here to tell you that we will not be defeated. We will not rest. We will not sleep until Big Brother is overthrown and the people of Oceania are free." The members of the Brotherhood cheered, and O'Brien raised his hand to silence them. "There is much that we must discuss," he said. "Plans that we must make, strategies that we must devise. But before that, I want to pay tribute to our fallen comrades, especially Winston and Julia, who sacrificed everything in the name of the revolution." A hush fell over the room as the members of the Brotherhood listened to their leader. They knew that he was right. They had suffered a setback, but they would not be defeated. They would carry on the fight for freedom, for democracy, for a better future. As the meeting dragged on late into the night, O'Brien knew that the road ahead would be long and hard, but he also knew that the cause was worth it. They were fighting for something bigger than themselves, for the freedom of their country, for the right of their people to think their own thoughts and say their own words, without fear of reprisal. He looked around at the faces of the Brotherhood, young and old, male and female, high and low, and he knew that they were in this together. They were a family, bound together by their common purpose, their shared suffering, and their unwavering belief in the cause. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window, O'Brien knew that the fight had just begun. But he was ready. He was ready to give his all to the cause. He was ready to lead his people to freedom. And that, my friends, is what would happen if O'Brien was the true leader of the resistance in 1984. Thank you so much for joining us on this thought experiment. What do you think? Is there another way that this story could have unfolded? Do you think O'Brien was truly the leader of the resistance all along? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking videos like this one. Until next time, keep questioning everything.